What started out as a disagreement over license plates could turn into a return to late 1990s tensions. The predominantly ethnically Albanian Kosovo has been looking for autonomy since the breakup of Yugoslavia, much to the dismay of its Serbian neighbours. But earlier this year, tensions reignited after a dispute sparked by Kosovo ordering those in predominantly Serbian parts of Kosovo to replace their Serbian car licence plates with Kosovan ones. The tensions were calmed by EU-led mediation, but not for too long, as on Saturday night, following the arrest of a Serbian policeman in Kosovo, 5 different instances of shootouts involving Kosovan police and unknown militias took place by the border with Serbia. In response, Serbs in northern Kosovo blockaded the roads by the border. Kosovo claims that Russia, a strategic ally of Serbia, is behind this, doing so in order to destabilise Europe. Is that a bit of a stretch, or entirely plausible? Who are the aggressors here, Kosovo or Serbia? Is the NATO presence in Kosovo causing more harm than good? Can this issue be solved diplomatically, or are we heading for another war in the Balkans?
So let's get to it. Are we heading to yet another war in the Balkans? As always, gentlemen, we begin with this quick fire round of 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick up the conversation right after. So, Mr. Velja, please take the lead.
Thank you so much for the invitation. For your question, the recent situation in the north of Kosovo, it's not something that we didn't see so far. We have such tensions since summer when Kosovo tried to implement license plates. And this crisis, it seems like repetitions caused by the same people and caused by the same policy. I think that Serbs are totally controlled. Serbs that live at north are totally controlled by the power in Serbia, the government, the Serbian president.
Mr. Velja, we will respectfully put a stop right here, continue our quick fire round, and get back to this point in a split second. Mr. Mirkovic, your 30 seconds are on, please.
Kosovo has been practically in a war zone without this continuity for the past 7 centuries. So this is just another episode. What is worrisome and what is happening now is that for over 20 years, NATO, the US, EU have tried to implement peace and they have failed. And what is very scary tonight is that we may go back to war because of this latest incident. It's not new, it's not something unusual, but it is scary because there have been weapons which have been pulled, people have been shooting at each other. And this is extremely scary and shows that the nation building of the U.S. has been a failure in the Balkans.
Okay, and we will expand on that in a second. Last but not least, of course, Mr. Dan Perry, your thoughts.
No one ever lost money betting on chaos in the Balkans, and certainly there's a problem in northern Kosovo. That said, I can't see Serbia invading, given that there's NATO troops all over the territory, and Serbia's current leadership, while it has a nationalist past, has pulled away from that and basically is interested mainly in joining the European Union, as well they might, given that Serbia is on the border of impoverishment and its per capita GDP is about half that of neighboring Croatia.
Yes, and questions, of course, remains whether the EU bid is strong enough of an incentive. We'll get back to that in shortly, and please feel free to engage in a conversation from this point onwards, gentlemen. Let's begin with somewhat of a provocative but an intuitive question. Who is the aggressor here, Kosovo or Serbia? Mr. Velja.
I was finishing my word in the first 13 seconds,
please,
but they went so fast.
Yeah.
We cannot talk in such a way who is the aggressor, because Kosovo and Serbia has a long conflict between two states. So always we have tensions in the north of Kosovo. Every time when Kosovo tried to put law there to make the law function. So there is always problem when Kosovo try to implement the law of Kosovo, and when Kosovo asks to respect the constitution. So that's the situation. I don't think that there is an aggressor. There is a problem that Serbs controlled by the government of Serbia and the president of Serbia always make tensions every time when Kosovo is trying to implement law and asking for respecting Kosovo's law. So there are barricades always when Kosovo try to push forward in the implementation of law of Kosovo and to respect the Kosovo constitution.
So, Mr. Mirkovic, who is benefiting from those flare-ups?
Well, I think currently it's the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Mr. Kurti, who is benefiting of this. As the other commentator said, Serbia doesn't think, even though it is bringing its troops to the border, cannot fight against NATO. It's going to be complicated. I think that there is a real risk that there's, as we saw in Krajina in the 1990s in Croatia, that there could be a risk of taking over militarily the north of Kosovo. That's a risk. I think definitely Serbs have nothing to gain in this situation. It's very complicated. And I think it's important to understand why it's complicated. It's because Serbia does not recognize this independence of Kosovo, as do practically the countries which represent 2/3 of the nation on earth. Algeria, the Vatican, Mexico, China, Russia, India, so many countries don't recognize the independence. And we've got on one side people who say, well, listen, Kosovo is a state and that's it, and you've got to obey the law. And on the other side, Serbs who say, well, listen, we don't agree with that because we don't agree that Kosovo is independent. The United Nations doesn't say that Kosovo is independent. So there will always be this tense situation, and I don't think Serbia has a lot to gain out of that right now, and Serbs don't either.
So, yes, please, Mr. Perry.
I mean, I would actually take an in-between view, and I would distinguish between the view of Serbia itself towards Kosovo proper and the view of Serbia and the people of northern Kosovo towards northern Kosovo. There is a difference. I would like to go back. The question here on the table is, do we think the borders, the internal borders of Yugoslavia are sacrosanct? There's an argument that says that they are not. And on the strength of that argument, Kosovo's majority Albanian population wanted, legitimately in my view, to leave Serbia. However, now that they have done so, the picture flips, and there is an equally understandable desire by the people of northern Kosovo to rejoin Serbia, because north of the town of Mitrovica, about 85, maybe 90% of the people are Serbian, and they're sort of stuck in Kosovo without wishing to do so. And I have to wonder about countries, not just small countries like Kosovo, but enormous countries like Russia, that are so fanatically hanging on to territory that they would be better off without. And I have to ask my Kosovar colleague here, would you not be better off letting northern Kosovo, north of Mitrovica, which is almost all Serbian, go back to Serbia? You'd have a more cohesive country. And by the way, you might then also consider uniting with Albania.
Mr. Velja, please.
Should I answer?
Of course. The floor is yours.
Also from the. So there was a lot of discussion 2 or 3 years, these last years, recent years, about the border correction. But there was a strong opposing from the United States and Germany specifically, because they are afraid that if they're going to start with Kosovo changing borders, there going to be also other countries that will be Republika Srpska in Bosnia. There are also Albanians in North Macedonia, and they will be probably opening the Pandora box, and there is afraid for a new conflict in the Western Balkans.
Well, hold on, but the fears happen when there's not agreement. Are you seriously saying that if Kosovo were to voluntarily cede the area north of Mitrovica to Serbia to make both the residents of both countries happier, that the U.S. and Germany would oppose it?
Yeah, but let me answer you with a question. Do you think that Western powers and Russia can guarantee that changing the Kosovo border, an issue that will solve the problem between Kosovo and Serbia and will put peace in the Balkans, will convene also to Russia that always ask for tensions and instability in the region of Western Balkans?
There are no guarantees in the world, but what it would resolve is the problem of the ethnic Serbs in northern Kosovo.
Yeah,
that would be solved.
But
whether Serbia itself would be forever mollified, I frankly doubt. But it would continue to not recognize Kosovo de jure while recognizing it de facto. I don't see Serbia, going to war over, Pristina. But I do see never-ending mayhem about northern Kosovo.
But Kosovo and Serbia, I think, that are too small states to decide on such issue that is too delicate. To reopen the issue of borders again and again after 20.
Well, if not the states themselves to find a solution, what better way, rather, to find a solution than the states themselves finding one and not imposed by foreign forces? And in this respect, Mr. Mirkovic, what is paramount here, territorial borders or ethnic homogeneity? And in this respect, echoing what Mr. Perry just said, perhaps the two Germany's model could work here, is feasible, a de facto recognition of Kosovo's independence, but not formally de jure to ratify such independence, so to speak.
I think the truth lies somewhere between those different elements. What is important to say is that Kosovo is not it's not a snow-covered plain with nothing. It's Serbia's Jerusalem, okay? And the problem that we have today is that the majority of the population is Albanian, and apparently they do not want to live with Serbs. So that's a problem. From a legal point of view, as I said, from the UN and international law, Kosovo is Serb. But then you can't just say, okay, it's going back to Serbia, and we'll settle the situation with that, because what do we do with under 2 million Albanians living over there? I think that we have to go back to the negotiation table. We have to discuss. Serbia was illegally bombed by NATO, by the US, France, Germany in 1999, illegally. I think it's important to underline that. To carve out Kosovo out of nowhere. There's no such country called Kosovo in history. There's no Kosovo language. And this was taken away from Serbia, and Serbia got nothing, just bombs. And then it had to rebuild. And again, it's a very poor country today. So that's not fair. Ex iuria, jus non oritur. You can't build justice out of injustice. So we have to get back to the negotiation table. Serbs and Albanians are neighbors. They used to be brothers in the past, in the medieval days. And I think you can't just get rid of a neighbor. You have to negotiate, find something, and we have to find a compromise. We have to stay as long as it's possible around the negotiation table, finding a compromise. I think it's going to be difficult for Serbia to have all it wants. It's going to be difficult for Albanians from Kosovo and the US and the EU to get all they want. We have to find a compromise so that they can continue living together, because, again, as long as the situation is not settled, we have this risk of war coming back to the Balkans.
Neighbors bound to live together and figure it out. It rings some bells. Mr. Mirkovic, Mr. Perry, and Mr. Velja, you're staying with us. We're out for a very short break, but we're back with part 2 of our summit right after, so do not go anywhere. We're back in a bit. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Mr. Nikola Mirkovic, Mr. Besnik Velja, and, of course, Mr. Dan Perry. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic, but before we dive back into the conversation, let's take a listen to the Serbian President, Aleksandar Vučić, of course, announcing the Serbian request to NATO, admitting it's a stretch, but following through with it anyways. Let's take a listen.
Today we agreed on the text in which we will, in accordance with Resolution 1244 of the UN Security Council, send a request to the NATO Peacekeeping Mission Commander asking him to ensure the deployment of members of the army and police in the Republic of Serbia on the territory of Kosovo and Metohija in accordance to the Security Council resolution.
So let's get to it. Are international organizations causing more harm than good at this point in time? Maybe another quick fire round of 30 seconds each, and then our conversation. Mr. Mirkovic, please take the lead.
Well, unfortunately, we've seen at least that the UN is not present in Kosovo today. The Kosovo has been created by NATO, US, and Western countries, and 20 years after the war, over 20 years, it's a failure. Kosovo is an extremely poor state. Many people from Kosovo are fleeing Kosovo. There's a lot of crime over there, and there's still a lot of ethnic hatred. And if you just read the last reports these past years with the US Secretary of State on human rights in Kosovo, you will see that Serbs are getting attacked practically every 2 days just because of being Serbs. And this is something which we cannot tolerate in Europe anymore.
Dan Perry, your thoughts?
It depends on one's goal. If you want to see an independent Kosovo, then you got to love NATO, without which probably they would have been crushed by Serbia in the 1990s. Similarly, NATO, when the U.S. and in a different way the UN intervened to stop the war in Bosnia as well. If your goal was a greater Serbia, then clearly we're not well served. I do think, however, that intervention by the West probably served to diminish the bloodshed, which, as it is, was epic.
Besnia Velja, your take?
The reason why the international organization, the main KFOR, that is the mission of NATO, is still in Kosovo is because of Serbia. Because Serbia for Kosovo is a permanent danger, because there are more than 20 military bases around the border of Kosovo. And Kosovo is in permanent danger from Serbia and the military of Serbia. So the peace in Balkans and also in Kosovo cannot be imagined without NATO troops in Kosovo. Thanks to them, Kosovo is free and Western Balkans is safe.
Okay, and please feel free to engage in the conversation, of course, from this point onwards. Is the EU membership bid strong enough of an incentive to figure it out on both ends? Mr. Mirkovic.
I would say no. I mean, the EU has a lot of problems today. Kosovo, as I said, we've got between around 25% poverty. It's an extremely poor country. It has received per capita more money than Western Europe received from the US after the Marshall Plan, after the Second World War. So what is the EU going to do with Kosovo? Again, Kosovo is now recognized by 5 EU member states. So it cannot join the EU because it has to have a unanimity of all countries. So the Kosovo cannot currently enter the EU. And last but not least, Serbia does not recognize Kosovo as an independent country, and it's written in its constitution. So I think this shows that the route to EU cannot be handled unless there's a compromise between Serbia and Kosovo. I think this is something which is extremely important, and definitely we can think EU membership would help Kosovo. EU has been helping Kosovo for the past 22 years, and we've got one of the poorest states in the regions in Europe today. So I mean, EU has not been. So.
As I understood the question, it relates to Serbia. Does the possibility of Serbia joining the EU, which certainly is possible, serve to constrain its actions in Kosovo? And I think it probably does. Serbia would benefit tremendously from access to the enormous open market of the EU, not to mention the free movement of people. If I was Serbian, I would maybe fear the depletion of the country in the way that we have seen, for example, in neighboring Romania. A brain drain. But I do think it motivates Serbia. You're absolutely right that a membership for Kosovo is a more complex matter because of the numerous countries that don't recognize its independence. But I do have to think that in the context of a grand deal, that issue would go away and everyone would, because the countries in the EU that don't recognize Kosovo's independence, by and large, are trying to do the bidding of Serbia. And I do understand there's bigger issues about separatism, which, for example, a country like Spain doesn't approve of because of the Catalan region and the Basque region.
Is trying to become a member of the EU, but there's a lot of pressure on Serbia from different countries within the EU to recognize the independence of Kosovo. So this is one of the major problems. So Serbia, I think, wants to enter EU. I think Serbia wants to keep on being a neutral state. That is its status. It wants to be independent and do the business it wants to do with whomever it wants to do on Earth. It wants to enter the EU, but not under the pressure of the secession of its land.
But would you not see the value in a grand bargain where Kosovo and Serbia both enter the EU, guaranteeing Serbian access to its heritage sites and its monasteries in Kosovo and so forth, and the border moves, my Kosovar friend, to enable northern Kosovo to become part of Serbia, but everyone's one big happy family in the EU, and everyone's richer for it.
But I mean, that's a nice idea, and I think everybody would sign right away if that were possible.
Well,
the problem, I think, I would just say on my side, is that a lot of people in Serbia just don't trust the EU. Don't forget that EU states and NATO bombed Serbia, and that 20 years after that, there still is prejudice against and hate crimes against Serbs in Kosovo. And we're saying that tomorrow, the people who haven't succeeded today will do better tomorrow. So that's why there's a lot of people who are hesitating. I think a lot of people want to enter EU for all the good reasons that you've mentioned, but I think there's a lack of trust. Why would they do tomorrow what they haven't done today?
But if everyone signed on to a grand bargain would be to everyone's benefit and would diffuse the core issues that are causing the angst today, why not promote it? Why assume that logic cannot prevail?
But the EU has to take that responsibility and say, listen, we're going to try to broker some sort of agreement between Serbia, between Albanians and Kosovo, maybe something concerning the Balkans, because I think this is not just a Kosovo issue. Again, if Kosovo Albanians are allowed to become independent, then we can say the same thing from Albanians in Macedonia, and Serbs in Bosnia, Croats in Bosnia. So, I mean, we should have some sort of open discussion on what the borders should be in the Balkans. But if this can be brokered by the European Union, it would show that it has some power, that it is useful in the Balkans, and that it could bring peace and prosperity. This is what was promised by NATO bombs in the 90s. And believe me, Balkans are all the countries in the Balkans and all peoples all say that we've maybe gained a bit of peace now. We're not trying to keep that peace in the future, but we're all poor, broke today, and that's quite sad for all the Balkans. So the EU has to show that it's able of mustering such a plan.
So, Mr. Velia, on peace and prosperity, everyone can agree. Mr. Velia, please.
The EU path for Kosovo is clear. Kosovo
we're having some technical
it's more complex than Serbia, but
please keep on going, Mr. Velia. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please.
Yeah. The process of EU membership for Kosovo is more complex because of those 5 EU countries that continue to not recognize Kosovo's independence. But for Serbia, there is no problem to join the EU. But Serbia is sitting in 2 chairs. Is sitting in Russia chair, and in the other way wants to join in the EU. Serbia once and forever should decide in which chair wants to stay. If Vučić wants business with Putin, he should tell the EU the truth.
So, gentlemen, as in the 30 seconds we have left, are the Balkans the next battlefield between the U.S. and Russia? Briefly, please, Mr. Mirković.
I think there are interests. Russia has interest in the Balkans. Many major countries. China has interest. Turkey has interest. U.S. has interest. So I think, the Balkans is a perfect region for a proxy war for many countries.
Mr. Velia, in the 10 seconds we have left, please.
As the international forces are here and we have the American-based Boston, I don't think that there will be another war in Balkans.
Dan Perry, always leaving us with some food for thought. Your concluding remarks?
I think one should never underestimate Vladimir Putin's ability to wage a proxy war anywhere, especially the Balkans. But I think he's busy in Ukraine right now.